This is Barbara Miller, and you're listening to The Empowered Podcast, Episode 22.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells, and thank you to Barbara Miller for leaving me that intro. If you would like to leave a welcome introduction to the Empowered Podcast, head over to empoweredpodcast.com, click Leave Me a Voicemail, and record your intro. Tell me who you are, where we can find you online, what you're about, and we'll put that into the show. And if you want to pick an episode like Barbara did for number 22, you can do that as well, and we will wait and we'll put that at the beginning of that episode. Maybe keep me accountable, pick something like 37, and then at least I have to do at least 37 episodes. In today's episode, I wanted to share a very unique story. Whenever I'm working, whenever I'm sitting out on the back porch or I'm typing a blog post or something like that, I usually listen to piano music. I queue up Pandora, and I have two stations. I've got a David Gray channel, and I've added other artists and things like that, but that's, got words, and it's got an upbeat tempo and things like that, and that's just kind of my hanging out station. But when I want to write, or when I want to read, or focus on personal development, I have a David Land's channel. And on that David Land's channel, you do the thumbs up and everything, and it recommends artists that have songs that are similar to the ones that you've liked in the past. Well, a couple years ago, I started seeing this artist named Paul Cardall come up on my Pandora. I didn't remember his name, but I always really enjoyed his music. It would pop up and I'd give it the thumbs up, and as Pandora goes, you get more and more of those songs. Well, a few months ago, I heard Paul being interviewed on another podcast, and so out of curiosity, I went and I listened to his music. I actually searched for his name instead of just adding thumbs up to my Pandora channel. And what I found was that I actually really liked Paul's music. I just didn't put a name with the song. And I heard Paul's interview, and his story is incredible. Just to give you a brief teaser of what we're about to get into, Paul was born with a congenital heart defect. For people who don't know, people like me before I spoke with Paul, is that he was born with only a part of his heart. He wasn't born with an entire body part like most people are, and he wasn't expected to live very long. And this is one of the first episodes of the Empowered Podcast that I have where we're really taking a different stance, or we're redirecting a little bit. I've mentioned it a couple times, but in addition to the entrepreneur and the successful people, I want to have people who have really overcome specific things in their life, like being born with only part of a heart. I've mentioned an upcoming episode with someone who had depression or was in a car wreck, some of those things, and this is one of those very first ones. And without really much more delay, I want to get right into the interview with Paul. Stick around at the end. I've got a couple announcements for you, and then I'll give you a taste of what's coming up on our next episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll go right into the interview. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Empowered Podcast. I've been listening to Paul Cardall's music for years, and I didn't know who he was or anything about his story, but discovered that, and I'm so fortunate to be able to talk to the man behind the music that I've been listening to for such a long time. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. It's good to be with you, and thanks for that kind introduction.
Well, you're very welcome. It's very, very much deserved. As soon as I heard that episode with Jared and started looking into your music, your Facebook page, I listen to music not necessarily for the inspirational value, but there are so many people out there who are just saying, actually one time, one of the stories was we were playing your music in the hospital as one of the last things that my mother wanted to do, and it warmed her heart as she left this world and how great a family experience it was.
Those types of things. I mean, how special to have your music, the music you create at such a poignant moment in people's lives, because those time periods are the things that we remember the most. And, the fascinating thing about instrumental music, the type of music that I do, is that the Center for Disease Control just came out with a study saying that certain types of music, like the kind I create, which is just soothing, relaxing, instrumental music, of course, I'm a solo pianist, is that this type of music actually reduces anxiety. It boosts the immune system, and it's far more effective in prescribing yourself this type of music than certain antidepressants. And for the Center, for Disease Control to say that, all that really does is legitimize why families like yours are using the type of music during such a challenging time.
Yeah, to me, whenever I listen to some of your songs, and I group you in there with David Land and Jim Brickman, and I could just turn it onto my headphones and tune out the world, whether I'm reading or I'm kind of having a fan moment here. But like I said, I really appreciate you coming on the show. And one of the reasons why I knew I had to talk with you is, with the Empowered Podcast, I talk a lot about people overcoming challenges, whether it's a divorce or a bankruptcy or starting a new business. And I hope it's okay that we go there with you, because I know it's part of your story, but you there's no kind of about it. You started off your life with a pretty significant challenge, and it's become who you are and led you to where you are. And would you mind telling us a little bit about, I think you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah, sure.
a little bit about that and how it led you to becoming a world famous and inspirational pianist?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's really at the heart, no pun intended, of the music, because, I think a lot of people don't realize that congenital heart disease, which is a heart defect at birth, it's the number one birth defect and the number one cause of death in infants. And so in 1973, when I was born, saving kids with defective hearts was quite unusual. Most of us didn't survive, but fortunately, there was a surgeon who knew how to replumb my heart because it was defective. It was basically only half there. I was born with a single functioning ventricle. And so at the time, it was very unusual for people to survive, and I survived. And my parents, they already had 3 little girls, and, I was the son, and they were told by the doctors not to expect me to live very long.
Wow.
Take me home, enjoy me, and, of course, as a parent, those of us that have kids, you put them to sleep in the other room, and how often are we thinking, are they doing okay, and what's going on, are they sleeping well? Well, my mom was constantly worried, is he breathing? Am I going to wake up in the morning? Is he still going to be there? Is this little heart going to stop? So fortunately, they plowed forward, and medicine and technology kind of just kept advancing as I grew older. And I grew up, I matured. When I was 13, I had kind of a scare. I got an infection where I almost lost my life. At age 14, I had to go back in from the surgery that saved me at age 13 and have another major heart surgery. And so really, I guess my life has been unusual because I was always given the perspective that I might not grow up, I might not be around very long, and yet my parents, because of the type of parents I have, they're very optimistic. I'm very blessed because after all these years, they're still together. And I've got a lot of support from them, they constantly were like, listen, everything's going to be okay. You've lived this far, everything will work out. And so they instilled that in my mind. And yet it was constantly, if I do die tomorrow, am I ready? And what does that mean? So as a teenager, because I couldn't do sports, because I didn't have the energy, even though I was like most kids, you couldn't tell I had a heart problem until I took off my shirt at the pool and you saw the scar. You really couldn't tell. And I was just a little slower and had to catch my breath a little more than most kids. But I think that's why I gravitated to music, was because my brain and who I am as a person was really trying to express in a way all the emotions that I was feeling, and music became something I was good at, in that I could hear a song and interpret that song on the piano. And I just began writing my own songs. I never really had much lessons. I just began really trying to interpret on the piano feelings I was having about my own situation, but also numerous people that were going through similar things. So the music, in a way, was kind of like my therapy and my addiction. As a teenager, I was playing the piano like 3 hours a day. Most kids today, are playing Xbox or, whatever. Playing the piano became my addiction. It was just amazing that you could sit in there and hear melodies and interpret emotions, and but I think all of us find something in our lives that we really enjoy doing. Whether it be, a musical instrument, painting, or, doing math problems on the side or whatever. People find something that they enjoy. And fortunately, what I enjoyed doing became my career.
And Paul, what was that like going through and having that reality in your face every day as a teenager? Most teenagers are completely opposite of that. They feel invincible. They drive fast and do stupid things. And you're like you said, am I going to be here tomorrow? What was it like going? What was that like?
I'm a pretty religious person because I did have to think about those things all the time. And I think people don't really become too religious until they have to think about that stuff. But for me, that's all I knew. I mean, I survived and I had adapted in a body that was not perfectly healthy. And so I didn't know anything else. It wasn't until, 4 years ago that I got a heart transplant where they took my old, defective, bad heart out of my body, and for the first time in my life, put a normal heart in my body where I could get all of the proper blood flow and oxygen levels throughout my body. I really didn't know anything else until that.
And that was when you were 36?
Yeah, I was 36.
Wow.
So I survived that long, and doctors are still kind of studying the case, and still applying a lot of the things doctors did to save me. They're using those same things to improve upon things that are saving other kids, so families don't have to lose their loved ones. But yeah, no, at 36, the heart finally began to just fail, and I was listed for a heart transplant. I waited 385 days. It was just the most dramatic time period because I had a little girl and I wanted to be around for my daughter, and yet the reality was, man, this is crazy. This is what I thought would be maybe in 50 years is all of a sudden right in front of me. I might not survive this transplant surgery because it's so complicated with my anatomy. Am I going to survive? And it's really sobering because you start to meet so many people going through the same situation. And that's a strange phenomenon with life is, if you get an illness, you start to recognize, oh, I'm not the only one that has this. There's all these other people. And, it's like opening Pandora's box. And I met so many families that had little children with heart problems. And the reason I was meeting mostly children was because my situation, I had to be seen in a children's hospital because adult medicine was not prepared to take care of people like me because everyone I knew that had my heart problem had died.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Paul, what is that kind of experience going through 36 years of life with a big question, over your head? What does that do to your perspective on things like getting laid off? I've talked to a lot of people that have been laid off. I've been laid off. That's a big one. Or people who,
That seems like the least of your worries, getting laid off, because gosh, at least you're waking up and breathing in the morning, and you have within you the willpower to go out and find something else, no matter how hard it is. You're alive. And I think the point is you have to enjoy every minute of every hour of every day, and you have to constantly tell yourself, maybe I might not be around next week. Is there somebody in my life I need to repair this relationship, or I need to apologize, or have I told, my spouse how much I love them and appreciate them? Are there people that need to know things? And so you think like that, and it becomes commonplace to constantly worry about other people more than your own situation, because you want to leave a lasting impression that you were a decent human being.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the trip that you just got back from a week or so ago, where you ended up traveling all over Europe and ended up in Israel. Why did you do that? Who did you take? And what was that process like?
I did a concert a few years ago at a big hall here in Salt Lake City, and there was a travel agency that came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, your audience, they look like educated people that like to go on cruises. Would you ever want to be a host of a cruise, and we'll pay your way, we'll take care of you, and you just go out and be kind of a shepherd and make sure everybody has a good time?" And I thought, gosh, why not? I'd love to.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
I'd love to travel. I've traveled a lot, but never to where I can just go and enjoy and not have to worry about performing, and I can just be myself. And so the agency, Dick Jensen and Alan McKay, we've over the years have started doing several tours. And the one we just barely did was to the Mediterranean on an Italian cruise ship. And it was amazing. We started in Rome. We went up to Monaco. And Monaco's just gorgeous. That's where Grace Kelly, the beautiful Grace Kelly, the actress, she became the princess up there, and her grave is up there in a church. And so we went up to Monaco. Then we went over to Olympia, where the first Olympics were in Greece, over to Athens, saw all those ruins, took people over to Turkey, went to Ephesus. Ephesus is supposed to have been where the largest Christian community was after Christ was crucified, after all that stuff happened. And then we took people to Israel. But the cool thing about the day that we went to Israel was we went to Jerusalem on the first day of Hanukkah. And so we went to the wall, the Wailing Wall, there in Jerusalem, and it was a party because on the first day of Hanukkah, everybody wanted to get their bar mitzvah. And so you had like all the 30 or 40 families or groups doing their bar mitzvahs. And of course, as you're on this tour, they let you go all through that area. The people over there are very accommodating. You yourself can go up and touch the wall that's so sacred to so many Jewish people. And we did that. We did the Mount of Olives. We did the upper room, which is near where King David is supposedly buried, and so it was I don't know so much as a spiritual experience, more of just gives you kind of a perspective and an angle into that time period, and the fact that civilization is still the center of attention after all these years is just fascinating stuff.
Paul, can we go into a little bit more about the music specifically? You've gotten some awards, and you've gotten quite recognized quite a bit for the music. When you got introduced to it in your late teens, because that's what your heart would allow you to do, between now, have you always played music? Did you know that you wanted to be a full-time musician, or did you have other types of jobs along the way?
I like most people, I started out as a dishwasher in a restaurant, and I worked grocery stores, and used to stock the dairy. Teenager through college years, I worked at a community college on a fine arts board. But no, music was something I wanted to do, but the reality of doing music and making money from playing the piano just didn't seem very realistic. I knew at the time when I started doing that stuff about David Lantz and Yanni and all those guys that were taking kind of classical and modern music and trying to pull it together and come up with this new age sound, George Winston, Mannheim Steamroller. And the odds of actually being successful at that, to me, didn't seem very realistic. And yet I kept getting opportunities to perform and to play, and people were asking, do you have a CD? What do you have? And I kept working at it, not so much with the notion this is what I'm going to do, but I was responding to people's demand. I was playing in a restaurant, just songs I'd written and arrangements of songs, and people were buying CDs from me. And I guess it kind of just like a snowball effect. But then, during college, my college years at the University of Utah, I studied film. I thought, gosh, I really want to go into film and make movies. But the odds of doing that as well, it's not like going and being an attorney or, getting a normal degree, like becoming a nurse, where you're going to have a job. The idea jobs that I wanted were so competitive and difficult to get into that it's kind of like, how do you make this happen? And so like people out there that are wondering, how do you get into doing this type of stuff? I think sometimes things just kind of fall into your lap. Other times I think you just have such good talent that you get discovered and you kind of get mentored along the way. And then there's the third thing, which you understand and figure out how to do it, and then you work it. And
which one's you?
All three of those things happened to me because the talent came, but you have to develop your talent. It's just not, you don't just get a talent and that's, you're amazing. You have to work hard to make it better. What you feel like you're good at, you still have to make it better. Anybody in the NBA or the NFL, they're constantly working their body to improve as they're aging. They want to get better. Same thing with like music. I needed to know how the music industry worked, and yet there's no college courses on how to do that. So I couldn't go to college and figure out how to do that. I had to learn, on the streets, and then study everything I could about every band, and really pinpoint and figure out a business model that would work for having a successful music career.
Who do you listen to, out of curiosity?
I listen to everybody. I don't listen too much piano music like I used to, because I feel like I'm at work when I'm doing that. But I listen to a lot of different artists, a lot of country, a lot of Christian artists, a lot of rap. Which
That's interesting.
I never got into rap until after I got my heart transplant. And I don't know what that, so I'm listening to certain rap and I'm like, why am I listening? I don't know why all of a sudden I'm interested in it. But
Do you start eating different kinds of foods too?
well, it's interesting because, my heart came from an amazing individual. He was 19 years old and sadly, he took his own life. But as I've learned more about my donor, the question is, do you start to feel and have any memories of that person? Like, because sometimes people associate that the brain function is still in the heart. And there's some doctors that say hearts carry memory DNA. So emotions, they carry that inside. For me, I don't know. I think a lot about my donor because of the sacrifice that was made because of his suicide. I'm alive. Mm-hmm. If he hadn't have done that, I don't know that I'd be here. And so, there's a lot of crazy, interesting thought process that goes through all of it. But
sure.
But he was an amazing individual, and he was born in Mexico.
Okay.
He was born in Mexico, so automatically, people are with their judgmental, the way people are is, do you like certain different types of foods now?
I didn't know that when I asked the Mexican food question.
No.
I was just kind of.
I just work harder than everybody else. That's what it is. So
what do you, this has kind of come out in the last couple of days, and when you mentioned country music, I knew I had to ask this question. What do you think about Garth Brooks coming back and maybe doing a new album, doing a tour?
Garth is Garth. Garth is the king. Garth is, listen, Garth's had a lot of personal issues, but Garth is human, and I think he's one of the most talented, amazing country singers of all time. But the thing with Garth is he took a break, and for some reason the industry and the market doesn't let you take a break. I mean, but he took a break and enjoyed life a little bit for a while, and now he's getting back into it. So, but I think he had a deal a couple of years ago with Walmart. They were attempting to create a record label, and that thing kind of all fell apart. And
I saw a documentary and actually talked to someone about this just yesterday. There was supposed to be, if I'm remembering correctly, there's supposed to be a movie where he was playing this Chris Gaines character. The movie was never released, but the CD was.
Yeah.
So half of the plan wasn't there.
I forgot about Chris Gaines.
Yeah.
That's
so I think
he ought to play Tupac in the next one. I think.
Maybe so.
Maybe that's what killed it. I don't know, the Chris Gaines thing. I know he did. He was on Saturday Night Live during the Chris Gaines thing, kind of poking fun of that. Garth's great. I thought he'd been in Vegas for a long time doing stuff, but I miss hearing his music. I do know that iTunes is not selling his music.
That's weird.
Because he hasn't allowed the record label to put it up there yet. It's kind of like what Kid Rock kept his product for a long time from iTunes. But then again, it was a smart maneuver. He was trying to make a statement about illegal downloads, but if it wasn't for Napster, artists would not be making as much money as they are now.
That's probably true. And just for the Garth Brooks thing, he was in Vegas, and I think he took a brief break. And I'm going to be in Las Vegas for New Media Expo at the beginning of January.
Yeah.
My wife was looking at tickets, and speaking of comebacks, the cheapest ticket that she could find was $450.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty excited about him coming back.
I better start writing country music is what I better start doing. That's amazing.
Yeah, you could have the Paul Cardall show or whatever in Vegas, and
Yeah.
I'd be up for going because, like I said, I really really enjoyed your music. So
My music might make people feel guilty for being in Vegas.
that's true too, because you definitely have um, an underlying lying, maybe not even underlying, maybe outright spiritual tone. And one of your albums, I think your late is New Life your latest album, or is there one since then?
Well, New Life is the latest album, but I did a soundtrack for a film called Ephraim's Rescue, which is about some people in the 19th century that were stranded in the winter.
Okay.
And so I did a film score for that. But yeah, no, New Life. New Life is that latest album. It's a couple years old, but it seems to have gone international, and even like Spain nominated it as the best album
Wow.
of the year in 2012.
2011 on
2011.
your site here.
Okay.
I'd say it was pretty successful considering it says you held a position in the top 5 for 30 weeks on the Billboard charts. So I'd say that's pretty successful.
Well, a lot of hard work, but I'm glad that people are starting to discover, the music and the impact that it's having on people. I mean, you mentioned, that as your grandmother was passing away,
Not me. That was a story that I heard.
oh, okay. Yeah, I hear that stuff a lot, and now I'm getting people that are saying, gosh, this is helping me finally fall asleep. Not that you ever want somebody, to fall asleep to your music, but with what I do, it's such a compliment because we live in such a fast-paced society where there's so many demands that we put on ourselves. I mean, I do it too. There's so much anxiety that, gosh, people have a hard time settling down at night.
And it's relaxing. I think that's
And so it's like we're prescribing this music now rather than just recommending it. We're prescribing, just 30 minutes of the New Life record, and I swear you'll fall asleep and you'll feel better in the morning.
yeah. I haven't personally tried that, but I would agree and suspect that definitely is as true as taking a Tylenol PM or something. It would definitely change your mood.
It's healthier.
That's true. That's also true too. Paul, what does the word empower mean to you? You're on the Empowered podcast. What does the word empower mean to you?
I think empower is something that's deep within us. We have the ability to really accomplish great things in this life if we just stay optimistic and just work hard. Yeah, but I think everybody has something they need to do during their lifetime, and it doesn't matter if we're on television or we're famous or whatever, but it's important that we find out, if we haven't already figured out, what is it that we're good at, what is it that we need to be doing to help other people, so that we can improve our society. The 24-hour news will tell you that the world's collapsing and everything's falling apart. But I travel so much. I go to so many foreign nations that we're really doing pretty good. I don't think that we're anywhere near the end of the world. People are wonderful everywhere you go. But also at the same time, the United States is the most incredible country because of the rich diversity that we have and the ability that we do have, for like a pianist like me to be able to achieve the dream of getting your music out there. America is still the land of opportunity.
Speaking of which, when you decided to, now I'm making a gross oversimplification here, but when you wanted to transition from, stacking groceries and stocking shelves to being Paul the musician, what kind of resistance did you face when you made that decision and decided to go for it?
Well, I think you're always facing resistance. I had supportive family and friends, but you always have opposition. I could get into detail how, I've been persecuted for my faith, where I haven't been able to appear on certain TV shows or radio shows because of my faith, basic bigotry. But you keep plowing ahead, you keep moving forward, and you never give up. You just have faith in your own ability to make a difference and to succeed.
Now that you're the full-time musician, what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, it's trying to figure out which things to tackle, because it seems like life is getting a lot more, because I now have the energy, I'm taking on a lot more responsibility. I started, I just built a big studio in Salt Lake City where we can record full orchestras, where I can work on film scores. And, I've got a great engineer here in our Stone Angel Music Studio. I'm building a record label where the music is strictly focused on helping people feel better about life and reduce anxiety and boost the immune system. So my typical day normally is I get up, I go to the gym, and then I come down to the studio and I answer emails, and then I play the piano for a little bit, try to see if I can come up with any new material. And sometimes it gets frustrating, and sometimes it's great. And then pretty much I have a lot of meetings with artists and with distribution companies, marketing companies. And so in a way, it's like I'm a musician / salesman / CEO of a company.
Do you play music to relax, or does it feel like business when you sit at the piano?
No, when I play, it's still like playing the Xbox. I'm still addicted to it. I can't play enough. It's a matter of creating time to do it, because of all the time I played, to where I created these songs where people want the music, I have to find time to make sure everybody gets the music. And so it's kind of like a catch-22. I got to work, but I got to create.
Yeah. So how do you unwind and relax at the end of the day, at the end of the week?
How do I unwind?
Should I start asking that question? Do you unwind?
My wife is so amazing that we either we go to a movie or we go out to dinner, and we try to unplug everything around 7:00 at night, so we're not online, we don't have the phones, we just get rid of technology. And I think that's the key to how we've been able to unwind. It's okay to put off something until tomorrow. And I think once you realize that, and that's something I battled, forever, but once you realize that, it's like, or I just, I spend time with my kids, and they always put everything into perspective when you're with your kids. So yeah, you just kind of unplug is the key to unwinding.
Okay. What was the last movie that you saw?
The last movie that I just saw? That's a very good question. I've been, the thing is I get into these TV series, and so I don't see too many movies as much as I see TV series, and TV's getting crazier and crazier.
What are you watching on TV then?
Oh, I don't know if I want to admit it. I watch the final, I do watch The Walking Dead. And
that doesn't surprise me, considering I saw your Facebook post about a month ago.
Yeah, and Sons of Anarchy.
Okay. Is that the one that you're kind of embarrassed about?
I am, because the ending, it's just it's like, when is Hollywood ever going to give us some happy endings? I mean,
I don't. I don't think you
I,
end
I,
I don't think happy endings give cliffhangers.
but it's like everybody who's making films had a horrible childhood or something. We've let these people be in control and have all this. Anyways, I just want Hollywood to end it, to start creating happy endings. The last, for those that watched the show Lost, that was a happy ending. Everybody went to heaven, or so-called heaven, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why can't you do that on some of these other shows? Now, Walking Dead, obviously, that's not gonna. Yeah, you already know everyone's gonna turn into a zombie at the end, but there's got to be some redeeming factor in the relationships those people have on that show.
Well, I don't think that at the closing curtain of the show, I don't think will they live happy ever after or not. I don't think that has the same draw as will they live or will they die a brutal death.
Well, and maybe that's why my blog was so popular when I was waiting for my heart transplant. Tune in to see what happens. It's too bad though we don't have like shows like the Cosby Show and good fun family shows. There's not one family on TV that's normal in my opinion, but I guess majority of the world assumes that there's just abnormal families everywhere. But I disagree with that.
So you're not a huge fan of Modern Family or
I think it's funny, and I think it serves a purpose and an agenda.
Yeah, I'd agree with that
I
too.
think it serves. I think. Listen, they're always on the cutting edge and trying to put pressure the majority into the minority's values, and I'm not opposed to a lot of things that they have on that show. I just think it's just humor. It's just Amos and Andy humor.
Yeah, it's kind of like the new one with Tim Allen. It's a very pro-gun. Well, it's somewhat pro-gun, but
hey, you're in Texas. That's
yeah.
See, and I just made a broad judgment there. So.
Well, I am wearing my cowboy hat, and my horse is parked outside.
Well,
roped up.
we already talked about Garth Brooks. I mean, I actually have family in Texas, and Texas is one of my favorite places in the world. Everybody in Texas that I've ever met is just upbeat and enjoyable to be around.
I'm glad to hear that. As a native Texan, having been born here and lived here all my life, I agree and take pride in that comment.
It's the truth. Texans are generally happy people.
I would agree, and we definitely have the most beautiful women here too. That's kind of an odd comment. My wife's from Texas, and a lot of beautiful people here.
Yeah, that's true. However, I still contend Salt Lake City has the best looking women.
All right. Is that where your wife's from?
No, actually, I see, and that's where I just put my foot in my mouth. Because I would.
Is she from Texas?
I would then say Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
If there's anything good in Cleveland, yes, the women in Cleveland.
Okay, yeah, Cleveland after all rocks.
Right? I will redeem myself with that statement. So
there you go. Well, Paul, what is one piece of advice that you can give people who, like me, are looking to start something new, to create our own business, or maybe for the young musician out there who's getting pressured to, get a business degree instead of pursuing their passion for music? What kind of advice do you have for people like us?
Well, I think you should do both. You should get the business degree and do music. If you want a career in music, there's no point in getting a music degree, because those people usually become, unless you want to teach, because if you want to do a career in music, you need to sell and have all the business skills, and so a business degree is perfect. You should get a degree anyways. But I think that there's a quote that I've always kind of heard and thrown around that basically goes like this: everybody who is somebody was a nobody at one time. So everybody that's out there and successful, they had to work to get there. You can't just get things handed to you. If you want something, you have to make it happen yourself. People will come into your lives, and you'll be amazed by it, how people will come into your lives and they will mentor you and help you, and you'll be able to do the same for others. But whatever you want to accomplish in life, first, is it realistic? Because not everybody can do music. You have to, but you can work in the music business. Not everybody can be, a prosecuting attorney, but you can work for a prosecuting attorney. So anything you really want to do, you can get yourself in that environment and be part of it.
That's great. I love that quote. I'm going to go back, listen to it, and make sure I type it up in the show notes, because I think that was very, very valuable. So thanks for sharing that one.
Yeah.
Paul, if someone wanted to reach out to you and connect with you and your music, or possibly say thank you for being on the Empowered Podcast, where should we send them?
Go to my website, paulcardall.com, or my facebook.com/Paul Cardall Music. And so it's Cardall.
Excellent. Well, Paul, again, thank you for taking the time to spend it with me.
Yeah.
And I'll let you get back to your day. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Okay. Chat with you later.
I'm such a nerd. While I was typing up the notes for this episode, I was sitting there listening to Paul's YouTube channel and listening to some of the music, and I really, really enjoy it. It's just it's really beautiful to me, and I think I'm a nerd in that way. Definitely a nerd in that way. Just a couple announcements before we head out. If you can possibly be in the Dallas area at the beginning of August, I highly encourage you to check out the podcast movement. If you're a podcaster like me, or you're thinking about starting a podcast, the podcast movement's a new conference that this is the very first time, and I'm excited to be actually the very first backer on Kickstarter. I don't know if that's something that people brag about or not, but I was the very first one, and there's going to be some incredible speakers there. I'll put a link in the show notes, so you can go to empoweredpodcast.com/EP22, and you can get the link for that. But I highly encourage you to check that out if you are going to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area to attend that. You'll get some incredible knowledge, get to meet some incredible people, and as you've heard me talk about a dozen times or so about New Media Expo, going to these conferences is one of the best things that you can do for your career, just for anything that you are wanting to do, just connecting with other people. If you are on Twitter, I'd love to connect with you. You can find me at Empowered Ellery. If you're on Facebook, like, I don't know, a billion other people in the world, you can find me at facebook.com/empoweringthe80%. And if you would like to leave me a rating and review in iTunes or Stitcher, I would greatly appreciate it. You can go to empoweredpodcast.com/iTunes or /Stitcher, and it'll take you right there to my show. You can find all of the episodes and leave me a review, and I'll mention you on an upcoming episode. And again, thank you in advance. I really appreciate every single person who's taken the time to leave a rating and review. Thanks for sticking around. Here's a taste of what's coming up on the next episode of the Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Ellery Wells. We'll talk to you next week.
Understand well that by starting, you have put yourself in a very elite class of people. You've separated yourself from the people who dream about doing something amazing, and now you're in the class of people who dream about doing something amazing and have taken bold action.